Hey guys, welcome to the first ever The Pod episode. And accompanying me today is guest star Nick Nunes. We're going to talk about our best or our favorite interpretation of a cinematic Spider-Man. And why don't you start us off? What is your favorite interpretation?
If I'm going to go through a list of my cinematic Spider-Man, it would be the Into the Spider-Verse, then it would be Tobey, followed by a close Tom Holland, and then lastly would be Garfield, who's kind of below third place, but we'll get into that.
Okay.
I know yours is similar, but
yeah, I'd have to agree with him. Intro to the Spider-Verse is the best interpretation of several Spider-Man and women that I've seen. Tobey Maguire is right up there, followed by, actually, Andrew Garfield, whom I really like, and then finally, the peg leg of the group, Tom Holland. Yeah, I'm not a big fan, but yeah, tell us, why do you think that Intro to the Spider-Verse is the best interpretation?
Mostly for me personally, it's because I like seeing this new take on Spider-Man, who's a more cynical, I guess.
Okay.
He's tired of being Spider-Man, and I like seeing that and seeing him come to his ways, where he goes from not caring about the dimension he found himself in to, at the end, being willing to give his life to save the people and the other Spider people.
And you're talking specifically about Peter B. Parker.
Peter B. Parker, the older one.
Okay.
And then I also liked that we got the other interpretation of him, the blonde Peter from Earth 616,
okay,
which is Miles Morales' universe. And that was just basically Spider-Man. It had callbacks to Tobey's Spider-Man. It had the Spider-Man 3 dance. I guess we can talk about that later if you want. But that one was just Spider-Man. He sees this kid who he knows has these powers and clearly does not understand it. He doesn't even know the kid, and he offers him guidance. And it's like, dude, that's Spider-Man to me. I don't know. They were just perfect. They were just a perfect polar opposite version of the same character. And you can clearly tell they're the same person, just different times of their lives. One's in their prime, one's not so much.
Going through some hardship.
Yeah.
Now, I'd agree with you. All those elements make that movie very special to me. But I gotta say, how they all tie together. It's a team-up movie. And, we've seen some team-up movies try and do that and fail miserably.
Yeah. Another argument for another day.
Yeah, it's a different discussion, but they did it so well. They introduced everyone so well, and they were able to carry emotional depth with each and every one of them. I felt compelled to care about every one of those characters. And, I wasn't very familiar with Miles until I watched the film, and I felt so connected to him afterwards. I felt, honestly, pretty well represented. Him being Latino and African-American descent, I was thinking, that's cool to have some diversity, to see myself in a hero on the big screen.
They played a really nice twist in too. They made him his own character, and if I believe in his own comics, which I think is the ultimate Spider-Man. One of the biggest criticisms he gets is that he's just people say he's just a black Peter Parker. I mean, they say they're the same character basically, but in this one I like the route they took. He's just a normal kid. Like any other kid you'd see in Brooklyn, I suppose. Yeah,
he's a very smart kid with a variety of opportunity who feels outcast. And honestly, he really carried the movie for me. There was a moment in between where I felt so emotionally compelled. There were so many scenes. We got a Stan Lee cameo. We saw Miles tied up, not being able to respond to his father. We saw him get talked down upon by his peers. Peter B. Parker, Gwen, Porky the Spider Ham, Peter Porker, and
that scene where they're just wailing on him.
Yeah,
they're telling him, "Can you get back up?"
Yeah,
he's just a kid, just got his abilities, and he's already being pressured to do all this stuff.
Yeah, and I feel like that was really all those scenes tied together, and then how it all flowed together so cohesively.
I just realized something since I just rewatched it. That movie ties in very well his school life with his actual life, because he's sent to this, I guess, boarding school. I don't know. It's like this school for really smart kids, and he's given these huge expectations, and then he becomes superpowered person, he gets the spider powers, and even then he still has all these expectations for him. So it seems like the kid just can't get a break, and he's just new to all of this.
Mm-hmm.
So
very relatable. A lot of, as I mentioned before, emotional scenes, and we take it back to what I was referencing. I was tearing up when I saw those things. I was kind of bawling out, and I was thinking, wow, just keep hammering me with these emotions. It was
all these expectations.
It was such a great film. Now, let's talk about Tobey's interpretation and his trilogy. Why are you so fond of them? Why is it your second interpretation cinematically?
Well, obviously there's the nostalgia there. I grew up watching these. I've always been a Spider fanatic since I watched those movies. I used to walk around flipping everyone in Walmart, apparently according to my mother. I'd go around flipping. So I have the nostalgia there, but also Tobey just conveys emotion very well to me, especially in the second and third movie. Second movie especially, which I personally think is the second best Spider-Man movie behind the Spider-Verse. For me personally, I know a lot of people put it on there number one, and I understand why. That movie's just, it's a perfect story about Peter Parker getting knocked down but always coming back. So, and I think Tobey did that very well.
Yeah, of course.
No, Spider-Man 2 alone makes him my second favorite. So
I know a lot of nerds like yourselves can really relate to that dorky Peter Parker.
Yeah.
No, but I totally agree. Especially the first film. That was the first superhero film that I ever watched. It was the first film that I remember watching, quite frankly, and it carried such emotional weight to me. You watch this kid who is an outcast. I feel like we've all felt that way in the past. Go through all these stresses as well as try to get that girl. And I remember being a kid and thinking, wow, feeling the same way. And it was such a great, honestly compelling film to think, wow, I can be that superhero, I would think to myself. And I remember also owning a set of those Webbers at home, and I would just spray them across. I remember my parents getting mad at me. Such a great movie. And then you talked about the second one, and it is praised. That's honestly an amazing movie because you get to see Spider-Man get knocked down constantly, quit the job actually, and come back.
It's not even that it's just like it's good for a superhero or even a Spider-Man movie. It's like a good movie. It's a good story of redemption, and anyone can relate to that. Everyone's had lows in their lives, and you always gotta find the way to get the determination to just always come back. Which is why that's one of Spider-Man's superpowers and why people love to relate to him. People love the character so much. This is determination.
Yeah. So he had what? His job was asking him for more.
Got fired from the job.
His best friend Harry was calling him out constantly for praising the bug. He wasn't performing as well as he could have at school because of this. The girl that he was romantically interested in was pushing him aside because he wasn't showing affection due to the fact that he was living this double life. He was getting thrown all of these impossible tasks, and it was too much. And I feel like we've all felt that way in the past. I felt that way. I was overwhelmed.
Yeah, I mean, college student, right where he is. Actually, in the movie, he's a college student, so pretty much right where he is.
I feel like every year that I grow as a person, every year that I take on a different task, I feel like I can relate more and more to that movie. It's such a beautiful way of saying you can always get back up. You can always just be yourself. And fight as hard as you can.
I think the best stories of Spider-Man are always the ones where his worlds collide, where Peter and Spider-Man have to live simultaneously at the same time, and how he deals with that. Those are some of my favorite stories, which is why I love the PS4 Spider-Man so much. But that's game. That's game Spider-Man. We'll talk about, different conversation.
We can't talk about Spider-Man 2 without talking about the train scene, the iconic train scene. His fight with Doc Ock. The CGI there still is up to par now. And like I don't mean to throw any movie under the bus, but Black Panther looks like a movie from what, like,
it's like a PlayStation 2 game.
But whatever. But yeah, Spider-Man 2, that fight scene and the way that he fought for those people, it was such a beautiful scene, especially afterwards where he's fatigued and the people carrying him, holding onto his chest the spider emblem, setting him down. And the scene where the older man, the dad, tells him that what he says,
this could be my son. Like, he's barely older than my son.
Yeah.
Like, anybody could be under this mask.
And then when those two young kids hand him his mask and say, "We won't tell anyone."
Yeah.
And all the New Yorkers gather together once Doc Ock gets back and say, "You're going to have to get through me to get to him." And it's such a compelling scene, embodying the character so well.
Yeah, I love that scene. That when the dad says that, I think when the dad says that, especially like when you think of a superhero, think of like Beefcake, like battle hardened, like Captain America. He's been through a war. Tony Stark, he got blown up.
Yeah.
Like you just like these people who've been through like so much like fights and hardships, but he takes off the mask. He's just this kid, barely in college. He still has to do homework and everything. Like he's not this like grown man who's been through like battles. It's just this kid.
Now we got to talk about Spider-Man 3. You know, it's honestly, I really enjoyed the film. There was a few moments.
Oh yeah, whether
Spider-Man.
Whether you want to make the argument that it's whether it's a good movie or not, you can't deny it's an enjoyable one.
Of course.
Like you can't watch this movie and not be bored. It's just like you can't, whether you're laughing at it or whether you're like actually enjoying it. You just can't.
I think we should talk about some of the highlights of the film. You know, starting off with that iconic Gwen Stacy kiss.
Oh,
I'm just kidding.
Kiss.
No, I'm just kidding. No, but honestly, like it starts off really well. That bond with his Aunt May, handing him the ring, asking him to propose to Mary Jane, and then that awesome final conclusion of him and Harry fighting for the first time with him with the goblin suit on. I was so hyped for that. And then that tension. Remember that tension that they build up around the ring, right? Like, is he gonna grab it, right? It's so well done.
That scene's set up really well because obviously it's at the beginning of the movie. You know, Spider-Man's not gonna die 20, 30 minutes into his movie. So I think Sam Raimi did a very good job with setting up. All right, the tension of his life's not there, but it's the ring.
That really.
So it was a really. Yeah. Well, I mean, he's not May's movie.
I know.
Set up that plot point very well, where you can't have the hero gonna. You know, the hero's not gonna die, but you throw in a third element.
Really, really well done.
Really well done, right? I think so.
Let's see. Let's fast forward in the film. What's another highlight? What do you think?
The Sandman transformation. I mean,
oh man, but before we talk about that, I really liked how they introduced Flynn Marco. You know, he's running away from the cops. He breaks into his old home.
He's not like your stereotypical bad guy. He's not being bad just to be bad. He's trying to pay for his daughter's medication. Because he's legitimately like a good guy. He's just doing what he has to do for his daughter. And his theme. Oh, Sandman's theme.
Yeah.
Oh, easily great.
And then the next scene that you were bringing up, right, where he has that transformation into the actual Sandman. So well done. So well done. You know, this guy is, for example, he's reaching over once he's developed for the locket of his daughter, and you can see the frustration in his eyes. That animation, that CGI was done so well, unlike Black Panther. But yeah, it was done so well.
Best drama. Yeah, and had no dialogue. CGI still holds up incredibly well, actually, for what, 2007?
2012.
2012. I don't know.
No, I'm just kidding. It was 2008 when it dropped.
2008, yeah. It still holds up incredibly well. Black Panther. And just having his music, almost like a depressed version of his theme. And then once he gets out, you can hear the anger and the anger. Yeah. The anger moment of his theme come through. And I just think it was incredibly well done. And I love the subtlety it had. He didn't need to say, "I'm angry, I can't get the locket," or like, "What am I?" Like, you can just see it.
His face.
Yeah, his face. He's like grabbing his face and everything. Like, he didn't need to say anything. It was perfect. I love that scene.
And then after that, let's see. I mean, there's a few honorable mentions that we can talk about, but I'd really rather just jump over to this next scene. Once Peter is, I'm thinking, once he's succumbed to the symbiote, right? And it's first grasped onto him, and he's webbing around, and he's like, "What is this?" Right? And right? Yeah.
The Venom theme.
Yeah, dude, that was so awesome. Seeing him, fly around. And then once he actually goes off to protect people, it was so badass. honestly.
Yeah, the darker side of Peter Parker I really like.
Not
really
so
like
much the
stories.
emo, but like, but yeah, it was pretty cool. And then what else? What else is there? I think, what is it? I don't want to jump too far ahead, but when he's actually taking off the Venom suit.
Well, that's a bit of a jump because we need to talk about the train scene in this movie.
Yeah. Oh, with Sandman. Oh my God. When he finds Sandman and he asks him about Ben Parker, right?
Remember Ben Parker, the man you shot down in cold blood? I believe were his words.
And Sandman responds with, "What does it matter to you anyway?" And then the train comes in, it hits him. Everything. Oh my God.
Oh, the cue on that. As soon as the train, everything.
Yeah.
And then I saw you last time we watched it together. You were pointing out you can see a very different fighting style from him.
Aggressive.
Very aggressive.
Very
Instead of
aggressive.
more of a
No
a
holding back.
defensive, more agile Superman. This is like a
Spider-Man.
Superman. like he's fighting less like Spider-Man, like a normal Spider-Man, and more like somebody who's just
I'm
like
trying to kill you.
like a bloodthirsty Spider-Man. Like he's shoving it.
Ferocious,
How was he supposed to know it's shoving this man's head into a train wasn't going to kill him?
Oh, you wanted to kill him.
Yeah, it's insane.
I thought it was really interesting how after that he told Aunt May, he's dead, but he was back to his regular Peter.
He had like a smile on his face. He was like, "Yeah, he's dead. I'm glad." And Aunt May's like, she almost became like the Spider-Man persona. She's like, "Spider-Man doesn't kill. That's not good. Just because he did this to us doesn't mean he deserves to die."
Mm-hmm.
And then you see Peter, he's like, shouldn't have done that.
Okay. And then I think from here, I know there's a little sprinkles of very, very important scenes. I think the next big one is once he's taking off the actual suit, right? The symbiote suit.
Mm-hmm.
And,
that scene where he's on top of the temple in the rain looking down. Oh, dude,
that was so iconic.
That's great cinematography there.
I wonder if it's back here. I wonder if we have it back here. Oh no, we don't, but we do have this. Yeah.
I remember being a kid, dude. The Black Spider-Man, bro. Dude, that thing slapped.
It was badass.
It was.
Okay. Yeah. And then after our Venom abducts Mary Jane, right? And he's opening up the box to his old suit. Such a beautiful moment.
His old theme kicks in.
Danny Elfman.
The classic. The classic theme kicks in.
I remember the first time that I watched it. I think every time that I watch it, honestly, I get this sensation down the back of my neck.
You get chills.
Chills.
Yeah.
And sometimes I kind of feel like tearing up. I know that's nerdy, but whatever. Like I feel it. I feel it. It's beautiful. Such a great scene. And then when Harry, I mean, sure, it was a little rushed, but if they would have spanned this out to like 2 films, it would have been so much better. But when Harry,
I think there was just too much packed into it. Was its problem?
I blame the studio, but
studio easily. You can tell in certain areas where Sam Raimi. You can tell what Sam Raimi was doing, especially in the last 2 films. He set up the feud between Harry and Peter very well, but then in this one, he made him lose his memory, which is like. Never been a fan of that plot point because it's kind of erasing the last 2 movies. I mean, he comes back obviously, and then Spider-Man throws a bomb at him. But that was
unhinged Spider-Man.
Honestly, just throws a bomb at his friend, it's just crazy. And then he goes into a. Yeah. But we don't talk about that. But yeah, he set it up very well, and then in this one, obviously the studio was trying to set up a 4th movie, which is why they threw in Sandman and Venom, which were characters. I like the way Sandman ties into Spider-Man. I think that would have been good for like maybe do this movie with Sandman, set up the feud between Peter and Harry more, and then in a 4th movie, which I would hope we would get, make it about Harry. I don't think Venom needs to be there.
Mm-hmm. But again, like wrapping up this film so we can move on to our actual debate. Yeah, they're really well done, despite the interference of the studio. Fan favorites number 2. All right, now you mentioned Tom Holland is your 3rd favorite.
Tom Holland is my 3rd favorite.
Okay, why?
Well, mostly for the Peter Parker aspect of him. I think Tom Holland is just a better overall Peter Parker. He's obviously younger. He's a new Spider-Man. He's still learning his ways. He's not immediately swinging from skyscrapers. The first time he has to actually climb anything tall, he has like a bit of a panic attack. So you can tell this kid's still new to it. And he's He's just like this like goofy kid, this dorky kid, and I think that's a good Spider-Man to me personally. Andrew Garfield.
We're not having this. Just
All right, but yeah, that's why to me.
Okay, well, you know, the biggest thing that every one of these interpretations has, I feel like we've commented on so far, is emotion. Mm-hmm. You didn't mention emotion once with Tom Holland.
Well, yeah, obviously. Yeah, because
he's a ball. He's a cheese puff.
He's a cheese ball.
He's a cheese puff.
Well, I think the problem with him is that they're not, because he's in the cinematic universe, a Marvel Cinematic Universe. I don't think they're trying to make him relatable. The same as the two standalone. Mm-hmm. The same as a standalone. It's a standalone Peter Parker. I think it's more just they want to have this character here, just to have him in the cinematic universe. I don't think they're trying to make him relatable.
Okay.
So I think they just want to tell the story. They just want to tell their interpretation of Spider-Man instead of making it like, how can we make this Spider-Man as relatable as possible?
Right, not to discredit the Spider-Man at all, because I think it's epic. You know, how they're tying it all in together. I think this huge universe is amazing. Mm-hmm. The only issue that I see is the fact that they're just constantly cranking these things out. To me, it feels like it doesn't give me time to really simmer down with this character and feel like, okay, I love you. You know, like, yeah.
I love you. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Marvel's a money-making machine. Unfortunately, we're going to get these movies, like, 4 of them, like, a year or something. Some insane number. So it's the same thing. It's the same problem I have with a lot of characters. The only reason I can connect to some of them, mostly the Avenger characters, because they've had a lot of their own movies. They've been built up before their like cameos and stuff. Like Spider-Man was thrown into Civil War, which I love him in Civil War. That's probably where I like him best. Until Far From Home. Yeah.
But talking about Far From Home, honestly, the reason, just take a step back to his interpretation of War than Infinity War, the reason why I couldn't find myself really feeling any emotion there, and I know some people did, is because a sequel was announced. I'm thinking, well, I don't feel so good. Well, bro, you should. You're getting a sequel. You're confirmed.
You're fine. Yeah. I can see why a lot of people say that, and realistically, it's a bet. It's not a realistic expectation to expect everybody to go in this movie as a standalone, especially if you're not like a big Marvel guy. Like you just want to go see the movie. You've heard a lot of hype about it, but there's a sequel. It's like, well, he's gonna come back. But I personally saw this movie on its own merits, and as its own thing. So instead of seeing Spider-Man, who's gonna come back, obviously, I saw like a young kid who had no idea what he was getting into, trying to do what he thought was right. And then I saw this kid begging to go home in Tony's arms, who I guess you could see as either a mentor or a father figure. I don't know what he sees. I know Tony sees him as like a son, but which they kind of tell you at the beginning when he's talking to Pepper about the dream he had that he had a son. Like that was the closest thing he had to that, and then Tony loses that, and then I just saw this kid who didn't know what he was getting into, and he died.
Okay, I see where you're coming from. I guess I was just being a bit more pessimistic. Obviously, I love the film. I think it's a great,
Infinity War is an amazing movie. Yeah.
A lot of very emotional scenes. I think Vision to me was kind of like a favorite part, but whatever. That's another.
Vision was your favorite.
Another discussion.
Really?
Another discussion. But
next time.
But yeah, there was a lot of really cool elements. Spider-Man just wasn't one of my favorites. But yes, let's talk about Garfield. The reason I put him above Holland is for a few reasons. Really. Not just one, but a few. He's funny. I gotta say, it was really refreshing. It was really refreshing to me after coming in from this Toby.
I think Toby did better quips.
We're coming in from this Toby and then going into Garfield. I'm thinking, wow, it's more of a modern take, because I honestly saw what
a douchebag.
What Garfield is doing as Spider-Man. Honestly, that's what I would have done if I would have gotten these powers.
But that's the thing. You can't make a Spider-Man movie and try to sell it off as someone who's clearly not in the nerd culture. Like, okay, stereotyping, obviously. But when you think of a nerd, you don't think of, a skater kid. And if you're gonna make a Spider-Man movie, if you're gonna try to relate to your audience, you should try to go for the actual like people who would watch and care about.
Some nerds.
Exactly.
No, Spider-Man is bigger than that. Spider-Man is not just a nerd. Sure, he's a smart guy. But the key element to Spider-Man is the fact that he feels like he's an outcast. He feels like he's alone. Yeah.
Then you can't tell me Andrew
is... Because Andrew felt like he was an outcast. Before, when we're first introduced
there were chicks checking him out.
Yeah, he's a fucking hot guy. What do you want me to say?
He's Spider-Man. It's supposed to be anyone can be Spider-Man. You can't have this freaking hot freaking supermodel looking dude be Spider-Man and expect, oh yeah, everyone's gonna feel the same about him as they do about Toby, who looks like
an attractive guy.
He looks like a goofball dog.
Toby's an attractive guy.
If you put Toby next to Andrew, bitch, anybody would pick Andrew.
Toby's an attractive guy.
I love Andrew. Andrew's an amazing actor. I think he's one of my favorites. Easily top 10, possibly top 5 for me. Mm-hmm. He's great. I don't know if you've seen Hacksaw Ridge, but
actually, yeah, I think I told you about that movie.
No, actually, I told you about that movie. Anyway, I'm not gonna talk about that. But he's amazing in that movie. I think Andrew's a very talented actor, but as Spider-Man, I just think like you can't have a guy. You can't say the core aspect of Spider-Man is being an outcast, learning his way when he's like this cool dude. Like he should have no problem finding his way.
There are different interpretations to being an outcast. Specifically, this one, he just felt alone. He felt like something was missing.
Nobody was cool enough.
Not just that, but you look at the way that he maneuvered himself, the way that he spoke to people, the fact that he didn't really reciprocate to these women that you brought up.
Kind of like a douchebag. He really was, bro. He was told not to skate in the halls. This dude skates in the halls.
Outcast. There are different forms of interpreting outcast behavior.
What kind of a Spider-Man breaks basic rules?
An outcast Spider-Man.
What rules did Toby or Tom break?
Toby? We're not going to talk about that. I don't know. I can't articulate that argument.
Because he can't. It's supposed to be great power comes great responsibility. Not put on a mask. Bro, he puts on the mask so the criminals he's attacking don't report him to the police.
Yeah, that's funny.
No, it's not funny.
I think that's funny.
That's not Spider-Man. You don't put on a mask. You don't make a Spider-Man character You don't make a Spider-Man put on the mask to get revenge.
Okay, me...
It makes Uncle Ben's...
Let's take a pause right here. Me not being an insane comic book avid fan, I can't argue that. I don't know. But I have heard that some people do think that this is the most accurate Spider-Man that we've gotten because of that comical aspect, because of that rationale that he has. That's what people have argued. That's what I've heard.
Well, that's the thing. When Spider-Man, especially in the comics, when he makes his quips, he doesn't come off as pretentious or douchey. Garfield does.
I like that.
And Spider-Man does it just to, like, pick on his enemies. It's kind of like his thing. Like, I'm not going to talk about that. It's a comic book. But that's, like, a core aspect of his character. He doesn't insult them just to be douchey. It's just what he does. He's a kid. He has that child mentality. And that's kind of... He does. That's why he never grew up in Spider-Verse. That was, like, a core thing.
Okay.
Is there a problem?
Okay. I mean, that's one way to see it. I disagree, though. I still think that Garfield's interpretation is much better.
The only thing I can agree with you on is Garfield is a great Spider-Man. Especially, like, web slinging. He looks great in the suit. He has the build for Spider-Man. Especially in Amazing Spider-Man 2, where it looks like the comic suit. Yeah, it's
beautiful. It's actually
great.
I think that right now.
It has some of the best cinematography, yeah.
Look at that. Beautiful.
And the
emotional aspect.
The romance between Gwen Stacy and Peter was a lot better than it was in the originals. And I still have yet to see how Zendaya and Tom play off of each other. But I think Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield play off each other very well.
Yeah, they did.
Which makes sense. They were dating when the Amazing Spider-Man 2 was made. Really, they were? They were a couple.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so it helps.
That's why the make-out scenes were done so well.
Because that's why they were, that's why their chemistry was so well.
Okay. I guess that wraps up our little first episode of the pod here. Any last comments?
Nope. I think we're good.
All right. Please comment down below what you think our next video should be on. And thanks for watching. Till
Bye,
next
guys.
time.